we have to talk about misleading movie marketing. An ad popped up on my social media feed, seemingly to promote Jordan Peele's newest film, Him. Except this isn't a Jordan Peele film. It was not directed by Jordan Peele. It was not written by Jordan Peele. It's actually written by Justin Tipping. Justin Tipping is the director. And I'm not the only one that fell for this marketing.
So many people think that this movie was by Jordan Peele. It makes almost no sense.
Actually, a lot of the marketing material for this film seems to lean towards Jordan Peele being the producer and less towards Justin Tipping being the writer and director. As a cinephile, this is annoying and a bit misleading, but as a marketer, I kind of like this strategy, and I'll explain why in this video as we talk about the marketing for the film Him, as well as other misleading marketing campaigns for movies, and why we keep seeing these misleading marketing campaigns. Welcome to Tea and Popcorn, where we spill the tea on all things movies. I'm your host, Megan, and welcome to this virtual tea party and movie club. It wouldn't be a tea party without drinks. In typical marketing girly fashion, I have an iced matcha latte. I also have my comically large water bottle. Let me know what you're drinking in the comments. As I mentioned in previous videos, I do have my degree in digital communications where I focused on film production, and I do work in marketing. So when I heard this discourse about Him's marketing, I just had to talk about it on the channel. So I'm gonna rotate between my cinephile hat and my marketing hat, so to speak. Quick disclaimer, even though I am a marketer, I did not work on these specific campaigns that I'm going to be referencing in the video. However, I am going to use my marketing background and some research to form my opinions. I do not know the specific marketing strategies for these campaigns, with the exception of one of them that I'm going to mention at the end of the video. When the announcement for Him came out in April, I remember a lot of people instantly thinking that this is a Jordan Peele film, just by the first posters that we got. There were even posts saying, oh, Jordan Peele's latest film. But after doing a quick Google search, I found out that that wasn't the case. And all of the posters we see from producer in very small, kind of hard to read letters. And then we see Jordan Peele. It does say it is a Jordan Peele produced film. So I would give credit where credit's due. We are not getting a Nightmare Before Christmas situation where it says Jordan Peele's Him. Jordan Peele has quickly become a respected horror director in recent years. His story alone really deserves a video of its own. So let me know if you want a deep dive on that in the comments. We see in this YouTube ad, the opening interview of this first look campaign is Jordan Peele. He actually gets a big percentage of the screen time in this ad, even though it clearly says producer Jordan Peele. We do get an appearance from Justin Tipping, but it's only one snippet. The reason being that Justin Tipping is not as well known. A good rule of thumb, at least from my experience in marketing, it's a good strategy to lean into a big existing audience. Jordan Peele has a big fan base. His production company, Monkey Paw, has a growing fan, and Monkey Paw really leans into the success of Get Out, even by the Him trailer itself. It leaned into Jordan Peele motifs to a certain extent. But I do see the differentiators between the styles. This isn't the first time that Monkey Paw has leaned into the production and Jordan Peele being the producer. An example of this is 2021's Candyman. Nia DaCosta was actually the director. However, Jordan Peele did co-write the screenplay. I find it very interesting how Him's marketing seems to even trick some publications to think that Jordan Peele actually directed it. But seems like after the first poster, they're actually leaning more towards the actors promoting the film and other content creators promoting the film. We are also starting to see more content with Justin Tipping, Marlon Wayans, and Tyreek Withers promoting the film through press runs, which was pretty interesting to me that they didn't really lean into Marlon Wayans being the biggest star of this film, but it might be because Marlon Wayans is more associated with comedy, even though he has done dramas before. Speaking of that, that's actually another marketing strategy that studios and PR agencies really do lean on is leaning into the actors themselves. We're almost starting to see a shift right now, moving away from the actors being the center point. But of course, we still do see that. Like, for example, the Fantastic Four cast, they were heavily promoting the film. We're also getting to the point where directors are starting to almost act like movie stars. We saw that in the marketing for James Gunn's Superman, which I did do a video of, so check that out after you're done with this one. And thank you so much for the love for that video. I was not expecting it to get over 10,000 views, especially as a new channel. So thank you so much for the love, and thank you to my new subscribers too. I appreciate y'all. You guys are smart. You're amazing. So yes, much love. I guess one positive of him's marketing is that a lot of people were saying what you get in the trailer for him is what you get in the movie. Now, I haven't seen him, and with that being said, him is not gonna be my type of movie. I'm sorry, it's just not my type. If you have seen him, let me know your thoughts of the movie in the comments. I will really love hearing what you have to say. This is a safe space for cinephiles, and I would say that's actually a pretty good sign that the trailer is pretty true to the content that you're going to receive within the movie. But it actually brings me to misleading movie trailers. As a marketer, there is a lot of moving pieces to a campaign or a project or a post. There's a lot of approvals. There's a lot of people involved. There's different things that you specifically have to promote. Some campaigns are successful, some campaigns flop. That's just the name of the game. And this is no hate to anyone that's involved in these marketing campaigns. Do not send any hate to people that ran these campaigns. Everyone's just doing their best. I asked my Instagram followers as well as I post on Threads, what is a misleading movie trailer? One person mentioned about how musical movies get promoted nowadays. And I would say the trailers that fall into that category the most is Wonka, The Color Purple, and Mean Girls. Now, from my research, I couldn't find any sources of why those decisions to avoid the musical element was made, especially in regards to the trailers. But from my perspective, and in my opinion, I think that these movies really tried to not niche down to a specific audience, that being musical lovers, and try to appeal to a wider market. I remember the marketing for The Color Purple used verbiage like a new take on the story you love, or like a reimagining, something like that. Just using very vague language. So you would think that this was a remake of the film, but it's actually an adaptation of the stage musical. Same thing goes for Mean Girls. The marketing for Mean Girls 2024 was, this isn't your mom's Mean Girls, which made me feel so old. When I did my podcast episode on Mean Girls with my best friend Sierra, she was actually surprised that it was a musical because there was barely any type of musical element. I would even say the same thing for the Color Purple trailer. The crazy thing about the Color Purple trailer is that it does lean a little bit more to it being a musical. However, it is so subtle. You almost have to kind of like know the backstory of the musical. The song that is used in the trailer is sung by Fantasia Barrino, who plays Celie, the main character, but she was also Celie in the musical adaptation of The Color Purple. Danielle Brooks is also in the film, reprising her role as Sophia. Like, we literally have only one scene with Fantasia Barrino singing. It does make sense that we only see Fantasia really sing in the trailer, but again, it's at the very end of it. There's song and dance numbers that are teased throughout, which happens in the other trailers as well. But for this one, they could have really leaned into it. I would say the same thing for Mean Girls. They could have leaned into Renee Rapp being a cast member in the stage production of Mean Girls. Like, that would have been so good. Actually, the gag is that the marketing did lean into Renee Rapp. However, it was read as the story leaning more towards her character of Regina. It was also a way to promote Renee Rapp's singing career. So take that information as you will. Another thing that is very frustrating to me is that there is a second trailer called Revenge Party. For those that are familiar with the musical, there is a song called Revenge Party. It's also featured in the movie. However, Revenge Party is not featured in the trailer. I would get credit for this trailer because it does feature the song Meet the Plastic. However, Renee Rapp is not really shown like singing the song either. And that's the most frustrating thing about these trailers is that they had the opportunity to show that it was a musical, and I think it wouldn't be a problem. Maybe I'm just saying this as a theater kid. As far as Wonka, I would give them the benefit of the doubt because Timothée Chalamet is not known as a singer. I could understand why the marketing wanted to probably shy away from leaning into the musical element of it. Even though Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is technically a musical because there are multiple musical numbers, it's almost not known as a musical. It's very interesting. One of the most notorious examples of a misleading trailer gone wrong is, of course, Kangaroo Jack. My fellow zillennial, young millennial kids. We thought we would see a talking kangaroo, but he only talked in like one scene. Upon doing some research on Kangaroo Jack, the film was originally supposed to be a rated R mobster movie. Same plot and everything, except it was changed into a kid's film, which is why it seems like the tone of the movie seems a little bit more adult, but seems like we're going to see an anthropomorphic kangaroo for most of the movie. There was a Reddit thread that argued that Kangaroo Jack is not a misleading trailer because it mostly does show the human actors. And I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt for that one. But I would also say, if you're marketing it to children, most of the people that were children back in the day still thinks this was super misleading. I personally don't think it was a successful campaign. Another thing I thought about is at the end of the day, the parents are paying for the movie, right? And the film was marketed as a family film, not really a children's film. So it kind of makes sense why the tones are a little bit all over the place, with the exception of the talking kangaroo. Maybe Kangaroo Jack's marketing is just a misunderstood Mandela effect that the film overpromised and underdelivered being a kid's film. But the writing is on the wall, especially with the movie poster. But overall, the film was critically panned, but it did win Favorite Fart in the 2004 Kids' Choice Awards, so there's that. Another film that was mentioned that is misleading in a bad way is Bridge to Terabithia. I do know that it traumatized a generation. Now, I read Bridge to Terabithia when I was in elementary school. I knew that it was more of a drama than a fantasy Narnia type of movie as it was promoted to be. And from a marketer's perspective, I could understand why they went that route because this was targeting kids. Narnia was very popular. The film tackles grief, such a hard thing to market to younger audiences. And on top of that, the grief element comes on later on in the movie, which would have spoiled the entire plot, let's be completely honest. So I'd argue that even though it was controversial, I could understand the marketing for this, and some trailers can be misleading to the point of a lawsuit. This was the case for the movie Drive. Now, if you watch the trailer Drive, it seems like more of an action film, but it's really more of a crime drama. And putting on my cinephile hat, I would say don't watch the trailer, but actually say the trailer doesn't give the movie justice. When I was in college, I did one of my final projects on the soundtrack of Drive. So yeah, the soundtrack's amazing. The performances are amazing. It's an emotional watch, but it's so good. Like, overall, it's such a brilliant film. But one woman didn't think it was so brilliant. She actually sued because she thought it was going to be more of a Fast and Furious type of movie. I don't know what came of that lawsuit, but she did sue. And that's just wild. I would say another slightly misleading marketing campaign is that of Babylon. Now, Babylon is a great film. It's a film about old Hollywood and the grittiness behind it, but it also talks about how actors struggled from the transition from silent films into talkies. It's a fascinating movie, great performances, severely underrated. It did not deserve the critical response that it got upon its release. So it's almost disappointing about the marketing campaign. At least some of the social media marketing. Come Watch TV actually breaks this down in more detail, but I would say Babylon was victim into trend chasing at the time the movie came out. TikTok was on the rise. Then there was a lot of like the TikTok voice. It's like when the text to speech was really trending, and they utilized that a lot in their social media marketing.
When your team is winning. When your team is losing.
I will on you. I will in your mouth. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Stop.
When someone takes the white elephant party too seriously.
What the fuck?
Which honestly does make sense with the context of the time. But the problem with these like relatable, quirky text-to-speech things, it doesn't really show what the movie's about. I would say the marketing on Babylon's Instagram is really good because I had a balance between those type of TikTok-y jokes, but also the marketing with like the trailer, as interviews from the cast. It teased the party aspect of the movie, but it didn't give too much away. However, one thing that I wish that they did, or if this type of movie was to come out nowadays, is to tap into specific cinephile communities. If a studio wanted to redo a marketing campaign about a film that is so entwined with film history and just about both the celebration and also exposing the underbelly of Hollywood, I would definitely get people from Film Talk, like influencers, even smaller creators that are really into film to talk about this film. Heavily lean into influencer marketing in those spaces and those very niche communities. Of course, that was barely a thing in 2022, 2023-ish, whenever this movie came out. And I'm glad that more studios are tapping into those niche markets because that is very smart to do. It makes things a little bit more relatable because you get the audience perspective, you get the fan perspectives. Monkey Paw did this for their social media for him, and I think that helped create the buzz. So yeah, if we could go back on time, Babylon should have done the same thing. If you haven't seen Babylon, check out the movie. It's gross, but in a good way. I would say the trailer itself for Babylon was edited really well, but it did heavily focus on the party aspect of it, which is only the first sequence of the movie. I'm just saying that there was a lot more potential, and it was almost misleading in a good way. But speaking of that, let's go into marketing campaigns that were misleading in a good way. The genre that does this the best is horror. In the trailer for Malignant, you think you're going to get this paranormal, almost like possession type of movie, but with a slasher element or edge. It's creepy, it's uncomfortable, but it makes you want to watch it. It's directed by James Wan, who we know has made a lot of great horror films, so the marketing leans towards that. There's a crazy twist in it that's pretty much hidden in plain sight. And that's what makes the marketing for this film so brilliant. It's actually a very fun and silly horror film, but it does have its creepy elements. So I just think it's misleading in a good way. Barbarian does a little bit of the same thing. The trailer for Barbarian is misleading as it plays along with our preconceived notions as horror fans. There's a little bit of a fake out in there that this might be a rom-com or a romance. But then we see Bill Skarsgård, who's known for playing Pennywise and It. We see Bill Skarsgård and we think that he is going to be this creepy guy, but we see a lot of crazy things that happen in the basement. See flashes and we don't know exactly what it means. There's a lot of twists and turns in this movie, come way out of left field, and it's a pretty messed up movie too. We have a couple of breadcrumbs in the trailer. It's like, hey, we're gonna see a little bit of messed up, spooky, scary thing, but you gotta see what everything means, you know? Barbarian's campaign also leans on the producers, but less on the producers' names, but more so the projects that they worked on. For example, they say from a producer of It. They don't say which producer, they say a producer. The trailer also says from a executive producer of The Grudge and The Ring. Again, it's vague, but it works. You know what I mean? Because those are recognizable projects. Oh my gosh, my face is getting red. I don't know why. Gonna overheat it. Trailer for Companion that came out earlier this year is also one of my favorites because you think that you're going to get a kind of a twisted Stepford Wives, a robots gone bad, almost an ex machina type of thing. And yes, some of those themes are still in the movie, but it adds a little bit more nuance. And even though there's comedic elements in the trailer, the film is actually a little bit more comedic, but in a good way. I enjoyed the film. It's actually pretty underrated. Because it came out this year, I'm not going to spoil it, but the girls who know. A trailer that misled me was Weapons. Now, Weapons had also a really great marketing campaign and very great trailer. The thing about this trailer is that it was also very vague. It was also very creepy. It leads on to the familiarity bias because it's by the same director as Barbarian. There was paranormal vibes, but actually it's more of a mystery with horror elements. So the marketing does make sense of leaning into the more horror aspects because we don't want audiences thinking you're just going to get a mystery and then seeing someone stab themselves with a fork in the face. That would have been so bad. So I think Weapons really did attract the right audiences because the film does have its drama, it has its paranormal elements, but the twist is almost that it is a mystery. We're watching this entire story unfold. What happened to these kids? What's going on with that? I went to Variety's Entertainment Marketing Summit a couple years ago, and one of the speakers was Sue Kroll, who is the head of global marketing at Amazon MGM Studios. She was talking about the campaign for the movie Saltburn, and she was explaining how they were debating about what angle to take their marketing. Did they want to incorporate more stories of the plot or even dive into the intentions of the main character? But they ultimately decide to focus on the location of Saltburn and drive their marketing towards that for the trailer. And I like this a lot because the trailer makes you question, is it a horror film? Is it a romance? Is it a comedy? And the answer is yes. And I'm glad the marketing did go that direction, which makes it a pretty interesting first-time watch. So why do we keep seeing these misleading marketing campaigns? In a nutshell, one is to tap into a specific market or a specific audience and lean into that. And two is to bring butts into the theater. And it's up to these studios and agencies to figure out what actually works and what doesn't, and kind of to experiment with that. Marketing in general is one part data analytics, another part psychology, and another part creativity. Ultimately, marketing is about the vibes. Marketing is about who we want to tap into. Which type of audiences do we want to tap into? And all of the examples of the campaigns that I mentioned in this video, audiences were at the center of it. And sometimes you have to mislead the audience to ultimately get a really good surprise result. When they work, they work. When they don't, they don't. For the example of him, at the time of this recording, him is currently #1 in the box office. And even though the marketing was misleading, it did bring butts to the theater. Editing Meg here, and a week has passed since my initial recording. So we kind of now have an idea about how him is doing at the box office. And unfortunately, it is flopping. So the budget for him is $27 million, despite of it being #1 at the box office his first week, opening at $13 million. Films need to make 2 to 3 times their budget in order to break even. So only time will tell, but so far it is not looking good. I still think the marketing was a pretty decent strategy because it did check all of the boxes. However, it's kind of a perfect storm. The expectations were so high because a lot of people thought this was a Jordan Peele film, and that's big shoes to fill for a young director. He's directed things in the past, but on a feature-length scale, he is very new. Some of the reviews that are coming out are not super favorable. From the feedback I've heard relating to this film is that it had a lot of great ideas, but the execution wasn't there, but there's so much potential for that story. It seems like it's a case of Jordan Peele probably should have directed this movie or been a writer on this film, or as a producer, guide Justin Tipping more. And this is not to bash the film or anything like that, because again, I have not watched the film, but objectively speaking, as far as box office, there's a lot of competition in the fall. I hope it actually, no pun intended, gets a little bit of a cult fan base, because I heard the movie is not terrible, like the case of Babylon, who also got really negative reviews. It's really unfortunate because this was supposed to be such a big film. Even though I wasn't going to watch it myself, I was rooting for this film to do well, especially because it's a new director, but stuff happens. And we actually have some tea courtesy of my girl, Chris Cinema. She met someone that works for a trailer production company, and one of their projects was him. And word on the street is him has 3 alternate endings. What do y'all think about that? I think this also goes to show how much goes into movie marketing. Anyway, back to the rest of the video. I think we're at this point in society that we actually do prefer a more vague trailer than one that lays out the entire plot like we've seen in the 90s and prior to that. There's a saying that says, if you market to everyone, you market to no one. Which is why when you see a movie in theaters, the trailers are very targeted. And these studios, they want you to see the movie in theaters. And I'm actually very pro theater watching, especially indie theater. Support your local indie theater. But unfortunately, people are acting a fool in the theaters. And I'm going to talk more about that in my next video. So subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on that video when it's out. Give this video a like and hype it up. That's a new thing. And I will see you in the next party. Bye-bye.